أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الغرر الميامين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري، فداه أرواح العالمين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك وعلى أهل بيتك وعلى أصحابك الطيبين الطاهرين. Brothers and sisters, السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Let me start by making a rather bold statement. You sitting here tonight in this hall, in this center, are the richest people in the world. And I don't mean that in like spiritual terms. I don't mean you're rich in terms of your outlook on life. I mean it in the most literal terms. Allow me to explain that, because I can feel a palpable sense of what are you talking about. You see, if you study economics and specifically accounting, this is like accounting 101. You have different types of assets. You have what they call current assets. And current assets are things you can immediately exchange for goods and services. We're talking about cash. We're talking about secure checks. We're talking about bonds. We're talking about stocks. These are called current or liquid assets. It means that you can exchange them for goods and services immediately or in the very short term. It's really easy to take cash and buy things with it. So that's one type of asset. The other type of asset is what's called tangible assets. And tangible assets are things like property, things like vehicles, boats, and these are essentially physical assets that you can potentially exchange for goods and services. But usually that doesn't happen very quickly. It might take a little bit of time, because you would need to go to an exchange, you would need to take your car to the dealership, you would need to somehow exchange those assets with goods and services or with cash. And those are called tangible assets. The third type of assets that add to your net worth, that are taken into account when somebody's net worth is being evaluated. When you hear, for example, Jeff Bezos is worth I don't know how many bajillions of dollars, the way they calculate that isn't just the amount of money that he has in the bank. Rather, it also includes this wide range of different classes of assets that we're talking about here, starting with current or liquid, tangible, and intangible assets. Intangible assets are assets that you have that add to your net worth, but are not tangible, meaning they're not physical things that you can touch and feel. They're not like a building or a car. You have people out there, for example, that are car collectors. right? I know a few of them. I know somebody who buys expensive luxury cars, not just to be able to drive them around and boast about having a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, but because this is an investment as far as they're concerned. So for example, this one particular friend of mine has a collection of very fine cars, including a Ferrari, but he doesn't drive it as much. In fact, he transports it on another car or by train to wherever he's trying to go to for business. So as far as he's concerned, this is a business asset. It's a means of making more money, not just a means of revving the car on the streets. So those are tangible assets. Intangible assets, listen carefully, are things like intellectual property. Things like a company's brand. Let's say, for example, you own a company and you've built this company up from the ground and you've been operating this business for a long time. Then at some point, you say to yourself, well, let's start a franchise right now. Let's start making more money by expanding. And the franchise is your asset. It's the name of the company. It's the fact that this company is now recognized, and therefore you feel like there is value to be attached to that name recognition. Another types of intangible assets are things like copyright. For example, you write a book or you produce a CD or something, and even though it's not cash, but it's still worth money because you own the copyright. If anybody wants to take that from you, if anybody wants to use it, they'd have to pay you to be able to use it. So, why are you the richest people on the face of this planet? Again, in physical monetary terms. I'm not talking about spirituality. Hear me out. I'll give you two proofs. The first is this. A man came to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He had been imprisoned prior to coming to see the Imam. And so you can imagine someone who's been in prison, he's just been released, doesn't have a lot of money, is struggling financially, comes to the Imam to complain about his situation. When he complains and says to the Imam that I have debts that are unpaid, I'm struggling in the day-to-day running of my life, the Imam says to him, but you're not poor, you're rich. He said to the Imam, how am I rich? I'm just telling you, I don't have anything to my name. I'm broke, I'm literally bankrupt. The Imam said to him, no, you're not. Let me ask you a question. That love that you have in your heart toward the Ahlul Bayt. And this is the theme of tonight's lecture. It's about God's greatest blessing. Of all the blessings that Allah bestows upon His creatures, this is the greatest one of all. He said to him, that love that you hold in your heart towards us, the household of purity and infallibility, the household of Rasulullah, if the entire world was given to you in exchange for abandoning that love, if they gave you the highest possible price so that you're stripped of that love you have towards the Ahlul Bayt, would you do it? He said, La wallah law u'titu ad-dunya. By God, if they gave me the entire world, I wouldn't give up my love for you. The Imam said to him, well, are you rich or poor now? In other words, if you owned the Kohinoor diamond, which is referred to as the crown jewel, it's owned by the British monarch, the Queen of England. It's called Kohinoor. It was the biggest diamond when it was discovered in quotation marks, by the British imperial forces in India, and was previously owned by Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, Mughal kings who fought over it. It's 105 carats, one of the most, actually not the most, it is the most expensive diamond in the world. As a matter of fact, its price tag is priceless. There is no price that can be attached to it. That's how important it is. That's how beautiful it is. if you own that, even though you might be broke, for example, you might have no money in your bank account, but the mere fact that you own the Kohinoor diamond makes you the richest person in the world, doesn't it? If you have something right now that you would not give up for the entire world, does that make you rich or poor? It makes you the richest person in the world. Proof number one. Proof number two. Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, the companion of Rasulullah, and also the companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, was a very outspoken critic of the third Khalifa, Uthman ibn Affan. And he was such an outspoken critic that he became a bit of a nuisance as far as the regime was concerned. So they started to harass him, and they started to track him down, and they started to send people after him. They started to threaten him with expulsion and other threats that were within their means. Let's not forget that Abu Dhar was a recognized companion of Rasulullah. He wasn't some random Tom, Dick or Harry that you could just arrest, apprehend and execute. You couldn't do that because he was Abu Dhar after all. The Holy Prophet was famous for saying, ما أقلت الخضراء ولا ما أضلت الخضراء ولا أقلت الغبراء على ذي لهجة أصدق من أبي ذر. The heavens above have never cast their shadow upon someone, nor has the earth ever held someone more truthful than Abu Dhar. Everybody recognized Abu Dhar. They couldn't just take him and kill him, and so they employed other tactics, intimidation tactics. You know, regimes even today do this all the time. They're able to intimidate people, threaten people, extort people, so as to ensure that they remain quiet. So they did that with Abu Dhar. It didn't work. Abu Dhar was very brave and he was courageous, and he felt like he had a duty to speak out against oppression and against the injustices that were taking place at the time of the third Khalifa. So the last straw was this. The Khalifa sent one of his slaves to the house of Abu Dhar in the middle of the night so no one could see. He knocked at his door, he opened the door, he's like, what? He said, I am here as a messenger from the Khalifa, and I have a gift for you. He said, what are you talking about? He said, I have this bag full of gold coins that the Khalifa has asked me to give you. This is your own personal gift. It's tax-free. Nobody's ever going to talk to you about it. This is all yours. No one's going to find out about it. Abu Dhar initially said to him, is this money being given to every citizen, or am I the only one? He said, no, you're the only one. You're too special. This is all yours. He said, well, is it part of the Khalifa's personal property, or is this taken from the Muslim treasury? Because as far as I know, the Khalifa can't afford to give me this random gift for no reason, no apparent reason whatsoever. So this isn't his money, and if it's not his money, then it's taken from the treasury. And if it's from the treasury, why am I being singled out? Why am I the only one receiving this? So obviously, he made the situation really awkward for that poor soul. So he's like, listen, long story short, this is yours. And the Khalifa also told me, my master, that if you're able to convince Abu Dhar, because you knew you would resist this, if you're able to convince Abu Dhar to take the money and be quiet, then he will set me free. I'm a slave. I'm owned by him. But if you do this one thing, you will bestow the greatest favor on me. I will become a free man because of this. In other words, you will not only be doing yourself a favor, you're doing me a favor. At that point, Abu Dhar says to him, you would like me to set you free while I enslave myself? I can't do it. So then, as they were having this conversation, suddenly the slave of Uthman sees the inside of the house of Abu Dhar from the crack of the door. He takes one quick look, then he draws his last straw. tries one last trick. He looks at Abu Dharr and he says to him, your children are starving to death. You're a poor man. Just take the money. I know you need it. And that's true. Because one thing many of you probably didn't know is how Abu Dharr ended up dying. Did you know that Abu Dharr literally starved to death? They starved him to death. He died in the desert out of starvation and dehydration. So when he looked inside and saw the children of Abu Dharr in hunger, he said to him, you're a poor man, take it. How does Abu Dharr respond? He said to him, Ana min aghna nas. What are you talking about? I'm a poor man. I'm one of the richest people in the world. He said, how is that? And this is actually narrated by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He said, I'm one of the richest people. How? He said, أنا غني بولاية علي بن أبي طالب والأئمة الهداة من بعده. اللهم صل على. My wealth comes from my fellowship with Ali ibn Abi Talib. And the fact that I follow in the footsteps of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the subsequent Imams from his progeny, the Imams of guidance, the fact that I have found guidance, the fact that I am saved by the message of the Thaqalain, by the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, by following the instructions of Rasulullah, how dare you say that I am poor? I am richer than anybody you could ever imagine. And brothers and sisters, that is why you are the richest people in the world, because you have a possession way richer than Kohinoor. You possess in your hearts the love of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. What's brought you all out here tonight, and not just you, we are but a drop in the bucket. The entire world tonight is in turmoil. The entire planet is now in mourning. Every country in the world, every province, every capital city, people have worn black and have begun the season of Muharram and Ashura and the season of lamentation and grief for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. The world has now put on its black shirt in mourning alongside Fatima al-Zahra to offer condolences to Rasulullah, to Amir al-Mu'mineen, to the Ahlul Bayt, to offer condolences to the Imam of the time. Brothers and sisters, you possess in your heart that most invaluable gem. What kind of a valuable gem is this? If you had a lot of money and you wanted to show your love for someone, how would you do it? Have you never seen those petty YouTube videos where somebody gets rich and then because they have so much money, now they're trying to make more money off of the money that they've already made from YouTube, and so they'll put out videos like, I bought my mom a house, or I bought my best friend a Lamborghini, or stuff like that. So in other words, if you're rich enough and you want to express your love towards your mother, you buy her a house, right? That would be like the ultimate gift. Or you buy your friend whatever, your wife this, that, and the other. Now imagine this. If God, the Almighty, creator of the universe, the creator of the universe, brothers and sisters, this universe that has over 2 trillion stars, and that's just one corner of the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a fraction of a moment of His willpower. كان أمره بين الكاف والنون, as Amir al-Mu'mineen says. He doesn't even have to say be, and it is. This God wants to express His love towards someone. How would He do it? He Himself, according to this hadith of Imam al-Sadiq, narrated in Kamil al-Ziyarat by Ibn Quluwayh, one of the most authentic collections of hadith in the Shia faith, includes this one. إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِعَبْدٍ خَيْرًا. If God wishes to bestow goodness upon someone, If he wants to express his love towards someone, how does he do it? قذف في قلبه حب الحسين وحب زيارته. He plants in his heart or her heart the love of Hussein and the infatuation to visit his shrine. This, brothers and sisters, is what makes you the richest people in the world. The fact that you possess in your heart an object that courses through your veins, that tonight feels uneasy. As the season of Muharram is about to begin, you feel this sense of restlessness, this sense of, so what do we do tonight? Where do we go? Which community do we join to lament the tragedy of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? That restlessness you feel in your heart, that sense of uneasy emotion, that emotional turmoil and outpour that you feel as the season of mourning begins, that is God telling you that He loves you. That is God telling you you should go and kiss the bottom of your parents' feet in gratitude that they raised you as a lover of Hussein, that they instilled within you this proclivity towards the household of purity and infallibility, that they told you the stories and legends of Ashura and Karbala, and made you the person that you are, who today you could have been doing 1,000 other things, but you decided to join a group of mu'mineen, brothers and sisters in faith, united around the love of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. And why this, brothers and sisters, is such a great gift, allow me to explain. I won't mention names, I won't mention specifics, out of concern for the privacy of the individual involved, and also because I feel like hopefully there is a way out. Hopefully there is a good outcome that we can expect from this little tale. And the reason I'm mentioning this specific story among so many others that I'm sure you've heard is because I was personally involved in this. And so I was invested in a way. A few years ago I visited a community and they had a program at the mosque where everyone slept over and we'd have lectures and Q&As and whatnot. And at some point there was this young man who approached me. He said to me, "Sayyid, I'm struggling." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I have these perverted sexual proclivities and tendencies, and I don't know what to do about them." I said, "Look, pray to God. Ask Him. I could try and maybe point you in the right direction, maybe give you some tips and tricks and whatnot, but at the end of the day, no matter how hard you try, there's always God. There's that great option that's available to you, to ask Him, right? Why is it that sometimes we feel all the pressure is on our shoulders? The pressure should not be on our shoulders all the time, because at the end of the day we acknowledge that we have a Creator, and if the Creator can help us heal from our physical wounds, then surely He can heal us from our spiritual wounds. Reach out to Him, beg Him, grovel, plead, do whatever it takes. Ask Him to intervene in your life. So we talked for a while, and he was genuine at the time, but we didn't talk about it after that. He went away. A few years passed until recently. Recently, I heard that he had left the religion of Islam altogether. So I was surprised, as you can imagine. I mean, this guy used to come to the mosque and he'd pray, and he looked like a really nice, genuine guy. And now I heard that he's writing articles and blog posts directly against God and against the Prophet, criticizing elements of Islam, but actually denying the existence of God altogether. and accusing the Holy Messenger of God of really nasty things. And so I asked, like, what's going on with this guy? So I will use discretion, but essentially what happens is this. He's struggling internally with these proclivities, with these tendencies. And at some point, he speaks to someone who says to him, listen, all you got to do is come out. Just tell everyone, announce it to the world that this is who you are, this is how you feel, and it really doesn't matter. And you'll feel much better after that. So he takes this guy's advice and he announces to first he goes to his father. His father unfortunately did not respond in a manner that was appropriate. He could have helped him, but he chose not to. He cared more about his reputation, which is another problem in our communities, brothers and sisters, which inshallah we'll talk about on another night, as to how families can offer support as opposed to just worry about their social status and their community standing. So the father just goes to him, look, I don't care what you do as long as you keep my reputation intact. And he later told his friends that instead of my father helping me, all he cared about was his own reputation in the community. And so he took that as an excuse to just, abandon everything. So later, he told a group of community members. He said, when I took that person's advice and I came clean and I reconciled with my perverted proclivities. In other words, I convinced myself that this is who I am and there's nothing I can do about it, and everyone should accept it. And when I did that, I really did feel much better. And by the way, parenthetically, the reason I think he felt better after that is because of a concept we believe in called istidraj. And istidraj essentially means, in English, the best, closest term, I think, would be to lead. Leading, right? It's when God makes people, He showers them with bounties and with pleasures and ensures that they have less and less things to complain about, so that they would completely abandon the righteous way, so that they don't go towards God and instead go elsewhere. Because, and here's a misconception in many of our communities, brothers and sisters. People say, I've been praying and I've been asking for such and such, and I'm just not getting an answer from God. In a sense, they feel like if you're suffering, then you're bad. But it's usually the opposite. If you're suffering, it doesn't necessarily say whether you're bad or good. But if you're not suffering, then there's something wrong. Right? Traditions tell us that the Pharaoh of Musa, alayhi salam, he lived for a very long time. And during that time, he committed the most heinous, the most atrocious crimes imaginable, including tearing the wombs of pregnant women and killing their unborn fetuses. I mean, can you imagine that? And he did that to tens of thousands of children because he feared that one of those children is going to come into this world and turn out to be the savior of the people of Israel, and he's going to bring his kingdom to a demise. So, despite all of those crimes, the hadith says that not once did he so much as experience a common cold. Fir'aun never fell sick. And that was part of God's plan. Because we have another hadith that says that if you go on for 40 days without so much as a slight problem, then you need to think about your choices. You need to think as to whether or not this is God's way of leading you away from Him. That by being completely consumed and occupied with the pleasures of this world, are you being distracted deliberately? Because you've made some choices that were so bad that God says, you know what, I give up on you. And so if you have problems, that usually is a good sign. And I'll tell you why. I'll give you an example that hopefully will illustrate this. Why is it that good people suffer more than others. The reason is this. Imagine you're a student and you're a straight A student all the time. And once you get a B+, the teacher is going to immediately call you to their office. What's going on? Why'd you get a B+? It's a B+. It's not bad, right? It is bad if you're a straight A student. But the other student who always gets the C- and the Fs and whatnot, it doesn't matter what happens to them. The teacher's never going to talk to them because they've given up on them. But if you are a straight A student, if you are a mu'min, if you're a good righteous man or woman, you slip up once, God's going to call you to His office. And He's going to say, what's going on? And calling you to His office is basically you having to suffer the consequences of your actions. You having to answer to the sins that led you to slipping up and making those mistakes. And that's God's way of actually nudging you into the right direction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that purely out of His mercy and compassion. Not because He doesn't care about you, because again, that's the tendencies that most people have. The first sign of trouble and they begin to complain about God. But if anything, we should be thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for problems and obstacles and issues that come up in our lives. Any challenge is a chance to thank Him, which is why Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, it's a beautiful, though terrifying story that I've often mentioned. One day Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam is walking, and right in front of him is a young boy of the Imam. The hadith doesn't say how old he was, but you can get the gist that he was probably in his early teens. In other words, when the boy has riped and he's reached an age where a father can be truly proud of him, right? And as they're walking, suddenly that young boy falls down and dies. Straight away. Was it a heart attack? Was it some kind of arrhythmia? I have no idea. But it was such an immediate tragedy that anyone, had they been in the shoes of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, would have lost it. So the Imam picked him up. And of course he's in mourning, of course he's in pain, he's a human at the end of the day. But he picks him up, he takes him back home. As soon as the women see the child, they begin wailing and sobbing and screaming. The Imam calms them down, and then he says, Subhanah, glory to the one, Subhanah, man yaqtulu abna'ana fala nazdadu lahu illa hubba. Glory to the one who kills our children, and yet our love for him only goes up. It goes up. Now here's a question, brothers and sisters. Had the Imam said, he takes our children away and we still love him, I would say that's incredible. But why does the Imam say that my love for God goes up, increases, when He befalls me with these kinds of tragedies, these unspeakable tragedies? Losing a child is the worst thing that can happen to someone. Mawtul waladi sad'ul kabid, the Imam says. It rusts your liver. It is the hardest thing for a father, for a mother, to see their children die. And yet the Imam says that my love for God increases because of these tragedies. Because the Imam knows that this is in his best interest, as well as the best interest of the child. That this tragedy is a means of elevating his status in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The grandfather of Sayyid Abdul Azim al-Hassani, those of you who have been to Shahriray and have visited the shrine of Shah Abdul Azim, they call him in Iran. His name was Sayyid Abdul Azim al-Hassani. He was a descendant of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, a great companion of 3 or possibly 4 Imams. His grandfather, Muhammad al-Abid, was given the title of Abid, the worshipper, the adorer. And he was imprisoned by the Abbasid dynasty and was tortured along with all of his companions when he was in prison, that his companions, his cellmates, were always amazed at the patience and endurance that this man displayed. In fact, historians say that when they came to torture, we're talking about Bani al-Abbas here, we're talking about people who persecuted the Ahlul Bayt and their companions even more than Bani Umayyah. Can you imagine that? Historians say that sometimes they would come to torture his cellmate, and he would say, and they were all mu'mineen, they were all descendants of Imam al-Hasan, and he would say, you know what, torture me instead of them. Can you imagine that? So one day his nephew, who was also in prison, he said to him, Ya Am, I know, not many people know this, but I know you have Ismullah al-A'zam. You have God's greatest name with which you can pray to God and have any prayer answered. I know that. Why don't you pray? Why don't you ask God to relieve you from all of this? He said, because there are stations and positions in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that one can only reach through suffering. Because if I don't suffer, if my suffering brings me in closer proximity to God, and the more I suffer, the more I will reach out to Him, the more I will connect with Him, the more I begin to appreciate what He has given me. And so I want to be able to reach those stations. Imam al-Hussein himself, when it's a famous story narrated by our scholars, Imam al-Hussein sees a dream the night before he leaves Medina. And in that dream, he says to the Holy Prophet, his grandfather, he saw the dream inside the shrine of Rasulullah in Medina. And so when he saw his grandfather, he saw his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima al-Zahra, Hamza, Sayyid al-Shuhada, his uncle. And Imam al-Hussein was in such pain and such pressure that he said to his grandfather, Jaddah ya Rasulullah, Dhummani ilayk, take me. I don't want to live this life anymore. Take me with you. So the Prophet said to him that there are positions reserved for you only if you get martyred. Only if you die will you be able to reach those positions. Which, by the way, are not positions that Imam al-Hussein himself coveted, because let's not forget that Imam al-Hussein and his brother Imam al-Hasan are what? Sayyida Shababi Ahlil Jannah. They're the masters of the youth of paradise. And so it wasn't about Imam al-Hussein getting a higher status, a higher tier, if you like. That position was the reward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Imam al-Hussein for being martyred in Karbala. What is the reward Allah gave him? Istijabatu ad-du'a tahta qubbatih. That Allah answers the prayer of anyone who visits the shrine of Hussein, as long as you're under the dome of Hussein. And by the way, the dome doesn't refer just to the golden physical dome. When you're in Karbala, the sky of Karbala is the dome of Hussein. Your prayers are answered. In other words, وَالشِّفَاءُ فِي تُرْبَتِهِ, to be healed from diseases and sicknesses and pains through the soil of Karbala, the sand of Karbala. وَالْأَئِمَّةُ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِكَ. These are the rewards that Allah gave Imam al-Hussein, and none of them had anything to do with him personally. In other words, being able to intercede for you and I, brothers and sisters, being able to intercede for those who mourn him, is why Imam al-Hussein chose to go and to make the ultimate sacrifice. So what I'm saying is this, brothers and sisters, you possess this great gift, the gift of the love of Imam al-Hussein. Let's try and maximize the benefits we can attain from this gift in this new season. What a blessing it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an investment that keeps on giving. An investment that gets renewed year after year. Every year we get together again and we mourn Imam al-Hussein with greater passion and greater intensity. And that is God's way of once again showing just how much He loves you, how much He wants to bestow His mercy upon all of us. إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِعَبْدٍ خَيْرًا. Always remember this hadith. قَذَفَ فِي قَلْبِهِ حُبَّ الْحُسَيْنِ وَحُبَّ زِيَارَتِهِ. So Anyway, back to the story I was mentioning earlier. This young man who through istidraj, through leading, he abandons. He wants to practice a certain lifestyle. Go practice your lifestyle. Why abandon faith in God? Why start writing articles against Rasulullah? That's God's way of leading him away from him. And I bet this person probably doesn't suffer whatsoever right now. Because again, God has no reason to call him to his office. God has no reason to make him suffer the consequences of his actions. Not in this world anyway. In the next world, it'll all be reserved for him. May Allah guide him. May Allah bring him back. But my point is, right now he says, I am happy. I don't have that internal struggle except for one thing. Listen carefully. He says to this group of community members, he said, when I came out, I didn't feel that internal struggle. My conscience didn't hurt me anymore, except for one thing. He says, I wish I did not know Imam al-Hussein. Because every time I wanted to veer away from God, I'd remember Imam Hussein. And every time I wanted to enjoy my new life, I'd remember Imam al-Hussein. I wish I didn't know Hussein. And I think that statement in and of itself will be a means of him actually rejecting Imam al-Hussein as well. Because once you reject God and His Prophet, that's the next station. That's an inevitable conclusion that you'll get to at some point. But right now, the fact that he says, I wish I didn't know Imam al-Hussein, tells you so many things. But the most important thing it tells you is this, that when you have Imam al-Hussein, you have clarity. I've always said, when you find yourself confused about doing something, always ask yourself, what would Imam al-Hussein do? Imam al-Hussein gives you clarity, moral clarity. Imam al-Hussein gives you faith. Imam al-Hussein gives you hope in the midst of the darkness. Imam al-Hussein gives you the willpower to overcome obstacles and problems. Imam al-Hussein gives you life. Imam al-Hussein gives you everything you would want in this world as well as the next. That's why this is such a priceless possession that you have. And you have it because God chose to give you the greatest gift. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a lot of gifts. In Dua Arafah, Imam al-Hussein, Dua Arafah, by the way, is probably the most all-encompassing prayer and supplication that specifically highlights God's bounties and gifts to us. Imam al-Hussein, at the very beginning of the dua, if you remember, and if you haven't read it, make sure you do, because as some of our maraja say, Imam al-Hussein is defined by two things. One, he's defined by Karbala, he's defined by Ashura, he's defined by his martyrdom, and two, he's defined by Dua Arafah. You want to get to know Imam al-Hussein? You can read his biography, you can read about his upbringing, you can read about all those things, but Dua Arafah, brothers and sisters, I think highlights the other aspect of Imam al-Hussein, his servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his knowledge, his eloquence and all that in the form of a prayer and a supplication. And in that supplication, Imam al-Hussein says, he says, فَأَيُّ آلَائِكَ يَا رَبِّي أُحْصِي عَدَدًا وَأَيُّ نَعْمَائِكَ, O Allah, which of your favors can I even begin to count? O Lord, which of your bounties can I begin to show gratitude for and thank you for? Which one? Then the Imam begins to swear in the name of every single one of his limbs. He says, in the lines of my forehead, in the veins of my body, in the cavity of my mouth and jaw, in this and that, he swears in all of those bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that if I were to live through the epics and eons, if I were able to live from the beginning of time to the end of time, لَوْ عُمِّرْتُهَا لَمَا أَحْصَيْتُهَا عَدَدًا, I would never even count the blessings of Allah, let alone show my appreciation and gratitude for them. How could I show my gratitude when you yourself, O Allah, have said in the Quran, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. You can never count them, you can never enumerate them, you can never thank Allah for them, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to do that, gives you the strength to do that. One hadith says that if you want to truly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you should say, Alhamdulillahi kama huwa ahluh. Praise be to Allah, and thank Allah as He deserves to be thanked. In other words, it's an open-ended statement. How does He deserve to be thanked? Nobody knows except Allah Himself. But that's one way. The other way, one hadith says that if you want to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sufficiently, meaning that as much as practically and humanly possible, then after each salah you should recite Tasbihatul Zahra alayhi salam. That's another thing, a great tip that I thought I'd share with you. My point is this: in Dua Arafah, Imam al-Hussein talks about all these great blessings, but by far the greatest, most valuable, most precious, most priceless blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? I'll tell you what. One day Imam al-Rida alayhi salam is walking with a group of people, and I'll wrap up after this. The Imam is walking with some people, some of whom were not in line with the Imam's school of thought, if you like. And the topic of God's blessings came in the conversation. And they said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us about His bounties on the Day of Judgment, right? And the Imam said, well, what is those blessings that Allah will ask us about? And one of them said, إِنَّهُ الْمَاءُ الْبَارِدُ وَالرُّطَبُ الْبَارِدُ فِي الصَّيْفِ الْحَارِ. Allah will ask us about the cold water and the delicious dates that we eat in the summertime. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam looked at that guy. He said to him, you think God is going to ask you about the water you drank and about the dates you ate? God is too great to bestow someone with these gifts and then hold them to account for every single one of them. Imam al-Rida explained, he said, if you invited somebody to your house and then you offered them a meal, and then on their way out you started asking them, going through an itemized list of all the things they ate, and you asked them how they dealt with them, would you be a good host? Would you be a good host if you treated someone like that? He said, you wouldn't accept this for your fellow human being. You would want God to do that? Allah will ask you about only one gift on the Day of Judgment, and that is wilayatu Ali ibn Abi Talib wa awladih al-mayamin. Allah will ask you about how you dealt with this greatest gift, which is the love and fellowship of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. He will hold you to account with that. Brothers and sisters, in order for us to maximize the benefits of this holy season, all the scholars of our faith, all the luminaries of our religion, all the people who reach the highest summits and apex in their lives did so thanks to Imam al-Hussein, did so by boarding the ark of Imam al-Hussein, did so because they maximized the advantage and the benefits they could get from this holy season, brothers and sisters. And in order to do that, you need to fix 3 relationships. Relationship number 1 is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there are sins, there are bad habits, there are issues that you know are immoral, unacceptable, wrong, try and get rid of them. Ask Allah for help, but make a firm decision, right? Man aslaha baynahu wa bayna Allah. It's a hadith by Amir al-Mu'mineen. Whoever fixes the relationship, repairs the relationship between them and God, aslahallah baynahu wa bayna al-ibad. God repairs the relationship they have with other people around them. If you think you have a rocky relationship with your boss, with your partner, with your wife, with your husband, and you're struggling, you're trying to fix it, but things don't work out, fix your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. So that's the first relationship we make the commitment to fix in this holy season. The second relationship is between you and your loved ones, your family, your kindred, your parents, your brothers and sisters. If you have a broken relationship there, make sure you fix it. Musa alayhi salam would go to the mount 3 years in a row. Every time he went there, he saw one repetitive scene. There was this old man who was always there praying to God for a child. After 3 years, it's a hadith. After 3 years, Musa said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, I've seen this man pray for a child for 3 straight years. Why don't you give him a child? Again, we have a lot of people who always complain, I've been praying for this and it's not working out. I've been praying for that and I just don't get an answer. Well, this hadith explains it. So God revealed to Musa, he said to him, he's been praying for 3 years. If he prays for another 30 years, we will not give him what he's asking for. Musa said, why? He said, because he has certain tendencies and certain habits he needs to get rid of. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Musa, he has a foul mouth with the people around him. He uses profanities. Brothers and sisters, our language matters. Our words matter. The things we say to people around us matter. He has a foul language. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Musa that this man doesn't have the purest intentions. In other words, he wants a child for God knows what reason. Right? So the hadith then says that Musa told this man about these things, he fixed them, and then Allah gave him the child that he so desired. So that's the second relationship that we have to fix with the people around us. If you have not spoken to your brother, to your sister, to your uncle, to people in your family for a long time, make sure you fix those if you're going to maximize your benefit from the month of Muharram, inshaAllah. And number 3, the relationship that we have to fix is between us and the Imam of our time. Brothers and sisters, for the most part, there is no relationship to speak of. For the most part, the Imam of our time is neglected, hardly ever thought of. Let's fix that in this season. Why? Because Imam al-Zaman is the inheritor of Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Zaman is the Imam al-Hussein of our day. If Imam al-Hussein cried out for help 14 centuries ago, أَلَا هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنْصُرُنَا لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ, that sentiment, that statement is being echoed to this very day. Your nusrah, your support to Imam al-Zaman, to the Imam of your time, is one that requires work. It requires that relationship to be invested in, inshaAllah. We'll talk more about that third item, inshaAllah, in the coming nights. But tonight, let us begin this journey with the words of Imam al-Zaman himself. The Imam of our time eulogizes Imam al-Hussein day in and day out. Every single day of the year, the Imam remembers his grandfather Abu Abdullah, and he grieves for him and he cries for him. As-salamu ala al-shayb al-khadib, as-salamu ala al-khadd al-tarib. Each one of these statements in Ziyarat al-Nahiyah, brothers and sisters, O mourners and lovers of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, refers to a separate and different tragedy that Imam al-Hussein was subjected to. Allahu Akbar. Peace be upon the beard that was dyed by the blood of the Master. Peace be upon the cheek that was dusty. Allahu Akbar. Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, the things he had to endure. They say that someone prayed to God and said, "Oh Allah, show me what happened in Karbala." Because all the things that you hear, all the tragedies that you've been told, are nothing but the tip of the iceberg. Maraja have issued statements. I know of at least 2 Maraja, Ayatollah Sheikh Ishaq Fayyad in Najaf and Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al Modarresi, both of whom have issued statements saying that you shouldn't exaggerate in other words, you shouldn't make up tragedies that did not take place, but that whatever you say about Ashura, whatever you claim you think about the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein, is nothing compared to what actually happened. There are things that occurred on the day of Ashura, and I've said this before, that I am not religiously permitted to tell you. There are things that our traditions have stipulated and have specified that I cannot mention on this blessed minbar. It's that tragic, it is that painful. And so Imam al-Zaman refers to this. And one of the scenes that Imam al-Zaman refers to in his Ziyarat al-Nahiya is this. Imam al-Hussein, when he was left all alone and he was abandoned all by himself, he tried to give hope to the women and the children. And the way he did that was he chose a location that was a little high up on a bit of a cliff. The Imam would charge into the battlefield, he would fight for a few moments, and then he would come back to that same location and repeat this statement over and over again. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Imam al-Hussein would say la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, and his voice would echo through the camp. And by having his voice echoing through the camp, the women and the children would have some hope that our father is still alive, Imam al-Hussein is still alive. Lady Zainab has hope that Imam al-Hussein is still breathing. And then all of a sudden that voice didn't come. Imagine you're waiting for someone, and as you're waiting for them, it's difficult when you wait, but then when you start getting worried, when you get anxious, like why haven't they arrived? When it takes longer than the appointment that you had with them, that's when the pain begins to mount. Allahu Akbar. They would hear the voice of Imam al-Hussein, and then all of a sudden that voice couldn't be heard. They'd sharpen their ears. They would try to hear any hint of the voice of the Mawla, when all of a sudden Imam al-Zaman says, Ja'a farasuka muhamhiman bakiya. The horse of Aba Abdullah comes back to the tent, but the Mawla isn't sitting on his back. Not only that, but they noticed the horse was crying. Allahu Akbar. Can animals cry? Well, this one could, because the rider was Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Muhammadan Bakiya. Imam al-Zaman also says, وَالسَّرْجْ عَلَيْهِمَ الْوِيَاء. The women and the children came out, they surrounded the horse. Where is our father? Where is my uncle? Where is my brother? The horse went back to the battlefield. The women, the children, Zainab, Sakina, Rabab, they followed the horse. When they saw Shimr ibn al-Jawshan sitting on his chest, Zainab cried out. She put her hands over her head. ليت السماء أطبقت على الأرض. I wish the heavens would fall on the ground. Why? This was Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. This was the same man that Rasulullah would kiss from head to toe. Jaddah ya Rasulallah. Immediately Zainab's heart went straight to Medina. Oh grandfather, Salla alayka Malik as-Sama. May God send you his blessings. Hada Husaynuka bil-Ara. In other words, Ya Rasulullah, we have no one to help us. Come and help us. This is your Hussein. مسلوب العمامة والرداء. Don't you see his turban is no longer on his head. أيوا ويلاه ومصيبته. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. والعاقبة للمتقين. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. I speak for myself. I know I am not worthy of seeing the Imam of my time. But wherever he is, O Allah, make him turn his gaze towards us, towards the mourners of Aba Abdullah, Ya Allah. O Allah, there are so many people who are ill today, so many people suffering in hospitals and hospices and elsewhere. By the grace of Aba Abdullah, give them relief. Oh Allah, a lot of people say, our youth, our sons and daughters, by the grace of Hussein and his standing in your eyes, protect them from evil and vice. Allahumma اغفر لنا ذنوبنا. اللهم تقبل أعمالنا. اللهم ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارة الحسين وفي الآخرة شفاعة الحسين. واحشرنا مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين. اللهم اغفر لمن مات على الإيمان وعلى ولاية أمير المؤمنين ومن مات من ذوي هذا الجمع وخدمة أبي عبد الله الحسين. ارحمهم برحمتك الواسعة. إلى أرواحهم وأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نهدي ثواب مجلسنا وثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على